When did you discover your entire life was built on a steaming pile of lies? So I just realized the last 2 years and 8 months of my life, plus every single penny I have ever saved, was built on a foundation of literal steaming hot lies, and I am currently sitting in the tiny coat closet of the tiny house we co-owned. Past tense now, I guess, trying not to throw up the Talenti gelato I stress ate. I need to vent this or I will actually explode. In GL, I am shaking so bad I keep hitting the wrong keys on my iPhone 14, which ironically he bought me using my Amazon credit card points, and I am pretty sure the battery is about to die because it's been hanging on at 3% for the last hour. Where do I even start with this mess? Okay, buckle up because this is going to be a long, rambling, probably incoherent mess, but I need to get this out. Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me I handled this okay. Tell me past me was just an idiot who deserves a break. My name is Elizabeth Stewart, 23F, and I live or lived with Patrick Lewis, 51M. Yes, you read that age gap right. I know, red flag number one, but hear me out. Patrick was different. He was stable, he was kind, he was financially savvy, or so I thought. He was established. I was a misunderstood loner, working in entry-level accounting and still dealing with the lingering fear of poverty trauma from my childhood. Patrick seemed like security, like the antithesis of everything that made me anxious. He always told me he had built himself up from nothing, that he understood true struggle, which resonated with me deeply. He made me feel safe. Past me was such an idiot, I swear. We bought this tiny house 2 years ago, and when I say tiny, I mean tiny. It's 350 square feet, everything is shared space. You can hear a pin drop in the kitchen from the bedroom. There are no secrets in 350 square feet. Spoiler alert, there were massive secrets. The first 6 months were amazing. We split the $1,247 rent mortgage equally, we cooked together, we watched Hulu and Netflix, and we had our whole life planned out. He worked in logistics, or that's what he told me. He was always on his Samsung Galaxy, constantly talking to clients about shipments and deliveries. Looking back, the sheer number of those calls was the first sign. Things started getting weird right around last November. Money was suddenly tight. We had always kept separate bank accounts but split every major bill 50-50, tracked meticulously on a shared Google Sheet. Suddenly, his half of the rent was late, sometimes by a week. When he'd ask, he'd have some complex explanation about a check hold or a slow wire transfer from a difficult client in Savannah. I kept picking up the slack, mostly because the idea of getting evicted from the only truly stable place it ever lived terrified me. That poverty trauma hits hard, you know. I started noticing small things disappearing from our joint fund for household expenses. Like I went to pay the emergency plumber $85 for unclogging the kitchen sink tiny house, massive pipe issues, and the $347 I knew was in there was only $247. Patrick, did you use $100? I asked him very calmly one Tuesday at 11:47 a.m. right before my 12 p.m. Zoom meeting. He was sitting at our small IKEA desk, playing some kind of noisy game on his computer, wearing his usual sweatpants and a t-shirt that smelled faintly of old coffee. He barely looked up. Yeah, I had to cover a quick unexpected delivery fee for the Dallas route. Nothing to worry about, Liz, I'll put it back tomorrow, it's just a float. It wasn't a float, Pat, that was the grocery money. I need to go to Costco later to get enough bulk stuff for the week, I said, pointing at the spreadsheet on my laptop. He sighed dramatically. Seriously, you're tracking $100 after all I do for this partnership? You're being dramatic, Elizabeth. Gaslighting, check. I backed down instantly. I hate confrontation. I hate feeling like a nag. I just ended up using my personal emergency debit card to cover the $43.67 grocery bill at Trader Joe's that night, and he never replaced the $100. This escalated. Over the last 3 months, I noticed consistent small withdrawals. $200 here, $150 there. Always explained away as work expenses or fuel for the truck. But he drives a beat-up Toyota Corolla, not a semi. I started feeling sick about it. My stomach was always tight. I started having stress acne again. I couldn't sleep. Then enter Carolyn Young, 65F. Carolyn has been Patrick's friend and neighbor for years. She lives 2 tiny houses down the road. She always presented herself as this sweet motherly figure. She'd bring over cookies, talk about her grandkids, and always told me how lucky Patrick was to have me. She was the definition of a two-faced friend, and I was too stupid and isolated to see it. Carolyn was the only person Patrick really seemed to talk to about his business. I hated that. I felt shut out. One night, I saw a text exchange between them flash across his cracked Samsung screen while he was in the bathroom. It was 11:30 p.m. I was on the couch, half watching some terrible reality show on Bravo, pretending to be asleep. The text from Carolyn read, "Did you hit the Vegas line or the offshore one? Don't make the same mistake you did last month, Patrick. You're bleeding cash." My heart stopped. Literally, I felt that full-body shaking start. Vegas line, offshore, gambling addiction, it clicked into place. The missing money, the extreme secrecy, the late payments, the anxiety radiating off him, the way he looked guilty all the time. He wasn't working in logistics. He was gambling. I immediately started digging, moving like a frantic, terrified raccoon. I accessed his old computer that he thought he'd wiped. I found PayPal invoices, Zelle transactions, and weird Cash App receipts all pointing toward massive repeated losses. He wasn't just gambling, he had a severe, debilitating, years-long problem that had only gotten worse since we moved into the tiny house, and he had easy access to my money through the joint account he insisted we set up. He wasn't $100 short. He was nearly $15,000 in the hole, and he'd been slowly pilfering money from my half of the rent savings for the last year to cover his escalating debts. I was devastated, but weirdly the initial shock gave way to pure, cold, incandescent rage. I saw red. The nerve. The sheer audacity of this 51-year-old man preying on my need for security and my fear of poverty. This leads to yesterday. I got home from work early, about 5:30 p.m. My manager had let me go because I am actually performing really well, and they are preparing me for a huge promotion I am supposed to hear about next week, which is why I've been working so much overtime unpaid NGL to prove myself. I found Patrick in the tiny kitchen making himself a Chipotle bowl, expensive non-bulk food of course, humming some tune. He looked completely oblivious. I walked in and stood in the doorway blocking his path, hands on my hips. "Where were you today, Patrick?" I asked, my voice calm but hard. I was proud that I wasn't stammering. He smiled easily, too easily. "Oh hey babe, I had a really complex meeting with the Detroit client, long day honestly. They are trying to pull some fast ones with the contract, massive headache." "Funny," I said, "because your phone has been pinging at the coffee shop on Main Street all afternoon, the one with the terrible Wi-Fi and the sticky tables. I know because I checked Find My iPhone." His face went blank. The Chipotle bowl almost slid out of his hands. "What are you talking about? I turned location services off this morning, you know that. I was on the 5th floor office downtown." "Oh, you mean the Starbucks?" I countered. "The one that serves the $6 latte, because I saw 4 different Zelle transactions this afternoon for $200 each, all labeled sports research fee." "Go out of our account, Patrick. They weren't fuel, they weren't float, they were bets." The blood drained from his face. He finally set the bowl down. "Elizabeth, you're overreacting. I can explain this. This is a gambling addiction that you've been hiding for years, costing us thousands and threatening our home." "Yes, I know. I saw Carolyn's text about the Vegas line." He looked away, running a hand through his thin, graying hair. He was busted. He couldn't even gaslight me this time. "It's true," he mumbled, his voice suddenly small. "I've been having a relapse. It got away from me. But I am trying to fix it, Liz. I am serious. I was just about to tell you." "No, you weren't," I said, feeling that ice-cold anger intensify. "You were just about to drain my savings and leave me with a shared lease and a defaulted mortgage. You know what? That's not the biggest problem. This is the part where it gets truly messed up. The biggest problem," I continued, "is that I was getting ready to forgive you. To tell you that if you went to rehab, if you finally stopped lying, that we could try to fix this. Because I love you, Patrick. I was ready to deal with the debt and the addiction and the fact that you risked everything I worked for." He took a step toward me, hope flashing in his eyes. "Liz, please, I can change. I held up my hand to silence him. "You know what makes it impossible, Pat? You were right about one thing today. You weren't at the 5th floor office downtown. But you weren't at the coffee shop either, not exactly." I looked him dead in his 51-year-old eyes. "I checked the Ring doorbell footage from about 1 p.m. today. You were standing right outside our tiny front door waiting for someone, and when she showed up, she was carrying a bag from IKEA. She was a logistics client, Patrick. She was younger than me, and she was crying." He stood there mute, a statue of betrayal and cheap deceit. "Tell me why," I whispered, the trembling returning, this time powered by sheer shock. "Our neighbor Carolyn texted her friend yesterday, 'Don't go over there, he's having problems with his live-in girl.' And tell me why that friend's name is Elizabeth." Patrick finally started to speak, his voice desperate. "Elizabeth, listen to me, that's not—" "Don't lie again, Patrick," I hissed, taking a step back. "I was looking for proof of your gambling. But the universe is clearly giving me a sign that I need to see everything. I found her Venmo account. She paid you $347 last week. You know what that $347 was for? Her half of the plumbing bill, Patrick. The bill you told me you covered." I realized in that moment that Carolyn 65F, the sweet cookie-baking, two-faced friend, wasn't just covering for his gambling addiction. She was covering for his entire parallel life. She was essentially acting as a wingman and a human shield. I felt my vision blur. I wasn't just fighting a lie, I was fighting an entire conspiracy operating 2 doors down the street. The tiny house felt like a cage. "She's been paying the bills for you too, hasn't she?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "She's not just a client, she's your other girlfriend, the one you were supposed to move into the tiny house with after I was gone." The silence confirmed it. He didn't even try to deny the cheating. The cheating was a footnote to the financial ruin and the years of emotional manipulation. He was just quiet about it, which was almost worse. I grabbed my work backpack and my keys. "I'm calling the bank, I'm calling the lawyer, and I'm calling the landlord. You have 24 hours to clear your things and your debts out of this house before I change the locks and notify the police about the fraud you've committed." I didn't wait for his pathetic, stammering response. I walked straight out the front door, slammed it shut, and then because I had nowhere else to go and I couldn't drive, I scrambled into the 3x4 coat closet off the kitchen, which is where I am now. I hear him pacing on the laminate floor outside the closet door. He's calling someone. It's Carolyn. I can only hear snippets, but the word crisis and money and Elizabeth knows everything are repeated several times. Then I hear his voice drop, getting closer to the closet door. "Elizabeth, I know you're in there. We need to talk about the lease. And my job, I'm serious about that promotion I told you about. I need to be here tomorrow. My boss is coming. I need this to look normal." I froze. Promotion? He's a gambler. He doesn't have a job. Wait. He was talking about a potential major promotion at his logistics firm that he claimed he had been working toward for months, the one that would stabilize everything. I dismissed it as another lie. "Elizabeth, I have to be here," he insists, knocking lightly on the door now, "because that promotion is real. It's for an executive role. My new boss, Mr. Thompson, is coming at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and I told him you, my fiancé, were hosting a small, professional breakfast in the tiny house to celebrate." "Fiancé? We aren't engaged. What the actual fuck is he planning?" Then I hear his voice shift again, talking low and fast into the phone. "Carolyn, listen, I need you to do something for me right now. I need you to call the bank and check those accounts again. We need to move everything she hasn't locked down. And please just make sure that other Elizabeth is not answering her phone. She cannot talk to anyone right now. It is absolutely crucial that my tiny house looks perfect and that my fiancé is smiling when Thompson gets here at 9 a.m. And then I hear the click of the lock on the tiny coat closet door. He just locked me in. He just locked me in. I sat there, literally paralyzed in the dark, breathing in the stale smell of old shoes and the emergency bottle of Windex we kept on the top shelf. 3 feet by 4 feet, that's my life now. A decorative element he can lock up when it's inconvenient. The sound of the deadbolt sliding shut was so loud in the tiny house it felt like a gunshot. My phone is still only at 3% and I am shaking so hard my whole body feels like a cheap alarm clock. I can hear him moving around the kitchen, still talking to Carolyn. Patrick, I told you she knows about Elizabeth, both Elizabeths, and she went nuclear. I need you to confirm that the transfer went through, Carolyn. Thompson cannot see this financial mess. If I get this promotion, we're set. I can pay everyone back, including the line. Carolyn muffled, but I can hear the sharp, brittle tone. Patrick, calm down. The accounts are fine. I moved what I could, but she's smart. She's locked down the main checking account. You need to focus on Thompson. Just make her participate. Make her smile. This house needs to look like a goddamn domestic dream. Patrick, she's locked herself in the coat closet. Carolyn, what? Why would she do that? Get her out. Patrick, no, I locked her in just until 9 a.m. Shell, calm down. We can talk after Thompson leaves. I just need everything to be stable for 4 hours. I heard Carolyn sigh, a long, dramatic sigh that felt like it condemned me personally. Carolyn, you are an idiot. Patrick, fine, get some sleep. I'll text the other Elizabeth and tell her to lay low. She's worried about that IKEA receipt being tied back to her. We need to keep her off the grid. My head was spinning, the sheer coordination. The casual way they were discussing my financial ruin and emotional imprisonment. They weren't just friends, they were co-conspirators in a financial and emotional abuse scheme. Carolyn wasn't a sweet neighbor. She was a fixer for a 51-year-old gambling addict who preyed on young, insecure women. And GL, the betrayal from Carolyn hurt almost as much as the cheating. I had confided in her so many times about my career stress and my childhood poverty fears. She had used that information to help Patrick manipulate me. The tiny coat closet, normally a sanctuary for the vacuum cleaner and my winter jacket, suddenly felt suffocating. I tried to focus, leaning against the cold wall. My priority, escape. I pulled out my phone. 2% crap, I had to be fast. I quickly texted my best friend Sarah. Sarah, 23F, works remotely in tech and lives in a small apartment about 45 minutes away. She's the only one who truly knows about my anxiety and my constant fear of instability. Text me, Sarah. Emergency. Patrick locked me in the coat closet. I am not kidding. He has a gambling problem. HES cheating. And HES using me for a fake promotion meeting 9 a.m. tomorrow. He wants me to play Happy Fiance. Call me. Now I have 2% battery. Do not text back. I hit send just as the phone died. Black screen, nothing. I sat there in the dark, heart slamming against my ribs, waiting. He was still shuffling around. I heard the fridge open, then close. He was acting completely normal, as if locking his fiancée in a utility closet was just part of the nightly routine. I started running scenarios in my head. Kicking the door wouldn't work. It's a sturdy, cheap MDF door, but it's still stronger than me right now. Plus, it would alert him immediately. Then I remembered the door latch. The tiny house was built quickly and cheaply. When we first moved in, the latch on the inside of the closet door kept sticking. Patrick had tried to fix it by tightening the screws, but he'd stripped the top screw head. I know this because I found the stripped screw and almost stepped on it. I felt around in the pocket of my work backpack. Financial security nerd that I am, I always carry a tiny multi-tool credit card. It's supposed to be for emergencies, and TBH, this felt like the emergency of the century. I worked the thin edge of the credit card around the door frame, right where the internal latch met the outer lock mechanism Patrick had just engaged. I had to be silent. I could hear Patrick humming again. God, he's repulsive. I wedged the card in, pressing hard against the stripped top screw hole, hoping the pressure would create enough give in the cheap mechanism. It took about 10 minutes of slow, agonizing maneuvering, but then I felt it, a slight shift. A tiny metallic click. The internal latch had given way slightly. I held my breath and slowly, inch by agonizing inch, turned the knob. It was still locked from the outside, but the door now had a tiny give. I thought about the hinges. They were on the outside, no luck there. I went back to the latch. The locking mechanism was a simple, surface-mounted residential deadbolt. It was designed for basic privacy, not actual imprisonment. I pushed the door inward hard, then pulled it out just as hard, rattling the frame slightly. Patrick stopped humming. Liz, are you okay in there? Just relax, we'll talk at 9:30. I froze. I stayed completely silent for a full minute, leaning against the door, trying to mimic the sound of someone who has given up. Patrick started moving again, going into the bathroom, which is directly adjacent to the coat closet. Perfect. As soon as I heard the toilet flush and the water running, I used the momentum of my entire body, throwing my shoulder against the door right where the latch plate was weakest. The door popped open with a surprisingly quiet thud. The cheap screws had finally given up under pressure. I didn't run. I stepped out like a ghost, moving automatically. It was 11:58 p.m. I grabbed the spare battery bank for my phone that was charging near the sofa, shoved my wallet and keys deep into my backpack, and without looking toward the bathroom door, I bolted for the front door of the tiny house. I was outside in the dark, cold night air before Patrick even turned off the bathroom faucet. I ran down the porch steps and sprinted down the street barefoot. I didn't take time to find shoes, clutching the phone battery. I kept running until I reached the main highway, probably half a mile away. I sat down on a bus stop bench, shaking, and immediately plugged in my phone. It took 2 minutes for the screen to flicker back to life. My phone screen was blowing up. 4 missed calls from Sarah, 17 texts from Sarah, 3 missed calls from Patrick already, 1 text from Carolyn. Don't be dramatic, Liz, just come back. We need to talk about the accounts. I called Sarah immediately. Oh my God, Liz, are you safe? I was about to call the police. Sarah's voice was sharp with fear and immediate maternal fury. I'm out, I whispered, still looking over my shoulder, terrified Patrick would drive by and grab me. I ran. I'm at the 7-Eleven on Highway 5. I need you to come get me and bring cash and maybe a crowbar. Sarah didn't ask questions. I am leaving now. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Do not go back. Do not talk to him. Wait inside the store. They have surveillance. Get a coffee and tell me everything when I get there. I felt the first wave of real relief hit me, and I walked into the harsh fluorescent light of the 7-Eleven. I bought the largest coffee they had, even though my stomach felt like it was full of angry bees. While waiting for Sarah, the anger came back, cold and focused. I realized I was just hours away from being financially destroyed and emotionally exploited for a fake corporate meeting. I started documenting everything on my revived phone. I took screenshots of Carolyn's dismissive text and Patrick's calls. I pulled up the financial records. I printed the PDFs of the Zelle transfers labeled sports research fee. I asked the cashier if I could use their back office printer. I told them it was a medical emergency, and the guy was surprisingly nice. When Sarah pulled up in her beat-up Honda Civic, she didn't hug me. She just looked at my barefoot, terrified face and immediately said, "You are staying with me. We are getting a lawyer, and we are going to dismantle his life piece by piece." We spent the rest of the night at Sarah's apartment, fueled by gas station coffee and pure righteous fury. Sarah helped me secure everything. We changed passwords on every account: Netflix, Hulu, my personal email, my work profiles. She physically drove me to the nearest branch of the bank where our joint account was held, thank goodness for 24-hour drive-through banking, and I filed an official fraud report based on the evidence of Patrick's gambling. The bank was shockingly quick about freezing the joint assets until the dispute was settled. It didn't recover the $15,000 I'd lost, but it stopped the hemorrhaging. I kept thinking about the 9 a.m. meeting. That promotion, was it real? Or just another layer of his lie? Sarah, who is a genius investigator when she's angry, pulled up the website for Patrick's supposed logistics firm. It was a real company, but Patrick wasn't listed on their corporate directory. However, a P. Lewis was listed as a contract driver, Savannah Root, not executive material. Promotion was clearly another scam, probably designed to impress the other Elizabeth and solidify his standing in the neighborhood, or maybe to get a loan he desperately needed. "We need to be there at 9 a.m., I told Sarah at 5 a.m. voice hoarse. "Absolutely not," Sarah said, making me a large bowl of instant ramen. "He locked you in a closet, Liz. We call the police." "No, if I call the police now, it turns into a domestic dispute and it will be messy, drawn out, and expensive. He needs to face the music in the most humiliating, public way possible. He wanted a professional breakfast in the tiny house. He's going to get it, but he won't get a fiancé." Sarah stared at me. "You're going to crash his interview. I am going to attend the professional meeting of the fiancé he lied to his boss about, and I'm going to bring evidence." I spent the next 3 hours perfecting my outfit and my strategy. I needed to look like the stable, competent, entry-level accounting professional I actually was, not the terrified loner he exploited. I put on my best blazer, did my hair, and reviewed all the documentation I had printed at the 7-Eleven. Sarah drove me back to the tiny house neighborhood exactly at 8:45 a.m. We parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest. I saw Carolyn standing outside her tiny house, watering a sad-looking fern in her yard, wearing a suspiciously nice floral dress. She looked jumpy. She was waiting to play the supportive neighbor role in Patrick's little show. The tiny house looked immaculate. Patrick had clearly cleaned all night. A black Mercedes was parked precisely in front of our minuscule driveway. The boss, Mr. Thompson, was already there. This was it. Sarah stood at the end of the street, ready to intervene or film if things went sideways. I walked up the steps and used my key. He hadn't had time to change the locks, thank God. I walked in. Patrick and Mr. Thompson, a very stiff, serious man in his 60s, were sitting at the small IKEA table, which was covered in a pristine white cloth and a bowl of probably stale bagels. Patrick was wearing a suit jacket that looked 2 sizes too big, and he was sweating through his collar. "Elizabeth." Patrick barked, jumping up, his face a horrifying shade of white and red. He tried to grab my arm, beaming a fake, desperate smile at Thompson. "You made it, Mr. Thompson. This is my wonderful fiancée, Elizabeth. She prepared this lovely breakfast for us." I pulled my arm away gently, maintaining my professional smile. "Good morning, Patrick. Mr. Thompson, it's a pleasure." I sat down immediately without offering to shake his hand, placing my work backpack on the floor beside me. Thompson looked confused. He was clearly expecting a bubbly, apron-clad domestic goddess, not someone dressed for a hostile takeover. "Please, Mr. Thompson," I said, my voice clear and utterly devoid of emotion. "Do ignore Patrick's previous statements. We are not in fact engaged, nor did I prepare this breakfast. I actually just returned after Patrick locked me in the coat closet last night to prevent me from exposing his lies before your meeting." The silence that followed was deafening. Patrick looked like he was about to melt into the laminate floor. Thompson raised one eyebrow and slowly set down his coffee mug. "Excuse me?" Patrick stammered, pointing at me wildly. No, sir, this is a terrible misunderstanding. Liz is under stress. We had a domestic disagreement about finances, that's all. She's very passionate about accounting, sir." I opened my backpack. I pulled out the neatly printed documents and slid them across the table toward Mr. Thompson. "Mr. Thompson, I understand you are here to offer Patrick an executive position in your firm. I would strongly advise against that. The domestic disagreement Patrick mentioned is actually $15,000 in debt accrued through severe untreated gambling addiction, which he has been covering by fraudulently using shared funds from our joint account for nearly a year. I have included Zelle and Cash App receipts for the last 6 months, all categorized by him as sports research fees." Thompson picked up the packet, his eyes scanning the documents. Patrick was making frantic, silent gestures for me to stop. "Furthermore," I continued, pressing the advantage, "Patrick is not a simple contractor in Savannah. He's been involved in running an elaborate scheme utilizing our neighbor, Carolyn Young, to facilitate his addiction and his cheating. I pulled out the screenshot of Carolyn's text. Yesterday, Carolyn confirmed to Patrick that she was contacting his other girlfriend, who is also ironically named Elizabeth, to make sure she did not interfere with this meeting today. The other Elizabeth also believed she was moving into this home. Your potential executive is actively maintaining two parallel relationships while financially liquidating the primary partner. Patrick lunged for the papers. Stop it, Elizabeth, this is private, you're ruining me. Thompson was a stone. He held the papers tighter and glared at Patrick. Ruining you, Mr. Lewis, fraud, infidelity, and addiction, that sounds like you achieved ruin all on your own. I stood up, adjusting my blazer. My only goal, Mr. Thompson, was to prevent a financial liability from entering your executive team. As a professional, I believe in due diligence. Thompson looked from Patrick's sputtering, red face back to me. Ms. Stewart, you're an accountant, you said. Entry level, sir. But I specialize in forensic analysis of small transactions, I said, completely straight-faced. Thompson pushed the papers back toward Patrick. Get out of my sight, Lewis, you're terminated effective immediately, and I suggest you seek professional help. He then looked back at me, a genuine if brief flicker of admiration in his eyes. Ms. Stewart, I should give you my card. Patrick was yelling now, truly unhinged. You can't do this, I am your FIANC, the house is mine. Thompson stood up, pulled his jacket straight, and walked past Patrick as if he were a fly. He paused by me, handing me a crisp business card. Call my executive assistant, Ms. Stewart. I might have a position for someone with your investigative eye and commitment to due diligence. You certainly saved me a major headache this morning. And just like that, Thompson walked out the door and got into his black Mercedes, leaving Patrick standing in the middle of the tiny house, defeated, surrounded by stale bagels. I picked up my backpack. I've filed the fraud report, Patrick. I've frozen the accounts. The bank is investigating. The lawyer will be in touch about the mortgage. I walked out the door, passing Carolyn, who was now frozen, fern-watering can clutched in her hand. You really did it, Carolyn hissed at me. Yes, Carolyn, I said, stopping to look at the woman who had pretended to be my friend for 2 years. I did enjoy cleaning up his mess, and tell the other Elizabeth she owes me $347 for the plumbing. I walked away and got into Sarah's car. Sarah was cheering so loudly I thought she might blow out her eardrums. Forensic accounting, she shrieked. You absolute legend. I didn't cry, I didn't cheer, I just felt an enormous, crushing weight lift off my chest. I had survived. 1 week later, a week went by where I literally slept on Sarah's couch and ate nothing but takeout and anxiety. The tiny house felt like a distant, embarrassing dream. I changed my work status to working remotely for the time being. Patrick blew up my phone for the first 2 days, 47 texts, 12 voicemails, all spiraling from rage to pathetic begging. I blocked his number on Sarah's insistence. The mortgage situation is a nightmare, NGL. Because we were common law partners and both names are on the loan, I can't just walk away. The lawyer Sarah found, who gave me a pro bono 30-minute consultation because she was so outraged by the closet incident, confirmed that Patrick has to be bought out or we have to force the sale. Either way, it's expensive and long. But she assured me the documented fraud and his financial insolvency would work heavily in my favor. I did something I never would have done before. I texted the other Elizabeth. I used an anonymous burner app because I didn't want any contact, but I needed her to know the truth. Text me to the other Elizabeth. Patrick Lewis has a severe gambling addiction and has been cheating on both of us for over a year, using your money and mine to cover his debts. He is currently unemployed and financially ruined. Ask him about the sports research fees. Protect your finances immediately. Her response came quickly. Text other Elizabeth. Who is this? Text me the original Elizabeth, the one he locked in the closet. Check your Venmo transactions from 3 weeks ago for $347. That was my plumbing bill, not a gift. She never responded again, but 3 hours later I saw a post on a neighborhood group page, a generic inquiry asking for a recommendation for a good lawyer specializing in shared property disputes. Petty? Yes. Satisfying? Absolutely. I think she finally saw the light. The biggest development, though, was Mr. Thompson. I called his assistant like he asked. She set up a formal meeting for Friday at 10 a.m. I wore my best suit, practiced my elevator pitch, and brought fresh copies of my resume and my B&W printouts of Patrick's fraudulent transactions. The meeting was terrifying but affirming. Thompson wasn't just impressed by my investigation. He was impressed by my focus and my ability to deliver bad news efficiently under extreme stress. Ms. Stewart, he said, leaning back in his enormous leather chair, his office overlooking the entire city. You have the grit of a true forensic analyst. You didn't just spot the $100 discrepancies, you followed the paper trail to a systemic fraud operation and neutralized the threat in front of me. I need that level of diligence in my internal risk assessment division. He offered me a job, not entry-level accounting, an actual risk assessment analyst role. The salary was 40% higher than my current miserable accounting job. It included full benefits, a 401k match, and they would pay for my further certification training. I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to cry. This promotion, a real, tangible promotion earned through sheer terror and necessity, was the exact security Patrick had lied to me about for years. It was the antithesis of the poverty trauma that ruled my life. I accepted immediately. I called my old manager and quit. They were shocked but understood when I vaguely mentioned a massive opportunity that aligned with my specific investigative talents. 2 weeks later, I officially started the new job on Monday. It's hard, it's high pressure, but it's mine. The anxiety is still there, but now it's productive anxiety, the kind that makes me check the numbers 3 times, not the kind that makes me hide in a closet. The biggest hurdle, the tiny house. I needed to get my things, but I refused to face Patrick alone. Sarah couldn't come because she had a huge deadline, so I enlisted the help of my friend Mark 30M, who is 6'7" and drives a pickup truck, a true lifesaver. We went on Tuesday afternoon, right when I knew Patrick usually went to the library to use their free Wi-Fi to watch sports scores, as the cable and internet had finally been disconnected from the tiny house due to non-payment by him naturally. I used my key again. The house was a mess. Fast food wrappers, dirty laundry, and a general air of desperation. I ignored it all. I packed 2 suitcases of clothes, grabbed my old accounting textbooks, and this is the petty part, NGL. I grabbed the entire stash of Talenti gelato I had stressed eaten the night of the discovery. My gelato, as Mark was loading the last box of my books, a key turned in the lock. It was Carolyn. She walked right in, looking horrified to see us. Elizabeth, what are you doing? You can't just take things. Patrick is very upset right now. I stopped right in the tiny living room, holding my box of personal documents. Hi, Carolyn, I'm moving out my property, you know, the stuff I actually paid for. She put her hands on her hips, channeling some sort of protective, pseudo-motherly rage. You ruined him, he lost the job, he's going to be destitute, you know about his trauma, he built this whole thing up from nothing. I looked at this 65-year-old woman, the two-faced friend who had enabled the entire mess, and realized she wasn't protecting Patrick, she was protecting her own investment in him. He was her little project, her pet, and now I had destroyed it. He lied about the trauma, Carolyn, I said calmly. He used my poverty trauma against me. He didn't build himself up from nothing. He built himself up by exploiting others. And I didn't ruin him. His severe gambling addiction and poor choices ruined him. I looked at Mark, who was standing there like a friendly giant. Mark, can you grab that hideous floral armchair? Patrick bought it, but I want to make sure I get the security deposit back. Carolyn's face fell. You can't take that. That was a gift from me. Ah, there it was, the moment of truth. It wasn't a gift, Carolyn. You were paying his bills, covering his debts, and helping him run a parallel life. You weren't a friend or a neighbor, you were his accomplice. And frankly, I hope the other Elizabeth sues you both. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She looked truly defeated. Mark hauled the ugly chair out the door. I grabbed the only thing I truly cared about in that house, a small framed photo of my grandmother. Patrick has 72 hours to respond to my lawyer's letter about the mortgage buyout, I told Carolyn. If he doesn't, we force the sale. Tell him to stop calling me. I have a new job and I don't have time for his crises anymore. I walked out the door and never looked back at the 350 square feet of betrayal. 2 months later, I'm typing this from my new apartment. It's small, 450 square feet, but it's mine. No shared lease, no weird joint accounts, no coat closets designed for adult imprisonment. The biggest expense is the security deposit, which I covered entirely with my first big paycheck from the risk analyst role. The tiny house saga is messy but moving toward closure. The lawyer is handling the forced sale. Patrick defaulted on the last 3 mortgage payments, shocker, which helps my case enormously. He's living on Carolyn's couch, I heard through mutual acquaintances who are now avoiding me. Carolyn is now apparently trying to manage his severe debt and his emotional collapse. They deserve each other, TBH, I still have bad days. Days where the anxiety spikes and I obsessively check my bank balance and double lock my door. The poverty trauma doesn't vanish just because I got a good promotion, but now I have the tools and the stability to actually deal with it. I realized something profound thanks to Sarah and the whole disastrous saga. Patrick didn't make me feel safe. He made me feel complacent. Security isn't external. It isn't a 51-year-old man promising stability. It's internal. It's having the knowledge that when a disaster hits, you have the competence and the resilience to get yourself out of a locked closet, expose a liar in front of his potential boss, and walk into a 6-figure job because of your own competence. I keep Mr. Thompson's card on my desk. It reminds me that I was right all along to trust my instincts, even when they led me to panic print evidence at a 7-Eleven at 3 a.m. I talked to Sarah last night and we screenshotted the other Elizabeth's public Facebook profile. She's now dating a guy who works in finance, so I guess she learned her lesson about logistics contractors. LOL, I'm working hard on setting boundaries. My therapist calls it asserting my authentic self. I call it not letting anyone steal my money or lock me in small spaces again. 6 therapy sessions in, and I'm starting to believe I might actually be okay. Yesterday, I bought a giant box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch and a half-gallon of milk just because I could. I poured myself a huge bowl and ate it in my new silent, safe apartment. It felt like freedom. I still hate Talenti gelato though. Anyway, that's the update. I'm done being the misunderstood loner. I'm the new risk analyst, and I'm never sharing a Google Sheet again. We'll update if the legal drama gets extra spicy, but honestly, I hope it just fades away quietly. Thanks for letting me vent and for validating my sheer, incandescent rage.